Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. This week we're going to be reviewing Flare from Hero Comics from 1988. But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own work. This is Random Access, which I produce on a monthly basis for my patrons. You can get it for $3 and you get the comic and also a sticker. You can check this out at patreon.com/Alexander Turbin. This one is the newest issue 17, and it's a 12-page full-size full-color comic, and it has a cover by Adam Yeater, and also the back inside cover shows off where you can check out his stuff, and the cover is really awesome. And you can also get these at my website, alexanderturbin.com. It has all the random accesses from Volume 1 and Volume 2, as well as Mutandis and Forlorn and all kinds of other stuff that I've published through the years. Or you could just check me out on Instagram at alexturbin0441 at Instagram. So this is Flare. I think I just read this and I hadn't read it when I was younger. For kind of, I'm not going to say for kind of good reason, because actually reading it, I really kind of enjoyed it. It's a little campy, but the art is pretty good, and the writing is actually particularly good too. So it's Flare from Hero Graphics, Hero Comics, and apparently it's an offshoot of a super group called the Champions, which was actually a role-playing game. And I actually kind of want to go back and maybe find some Champions role-playing game stuff and maybe get some comics and kind of reference and see what was going on. It's kind of interesting because this is obviously some cheesecake. It's going to show you some hot looking women and in compromising situations, and so it's quite obviously cheesecake, but I'm wondering what the Champions is like. But apparently because the writer and the creator and stuff of the Champions, the comic book, went into that direction, apparently the creators of the role-playing game didn't really like it, so they pulled the rights from the Champions, and it's quite an interesting thing. It was bankrolled by the guy that was in charge of innovation and Eternity, and I'm gonna do some research and really check out this whole thing. The guys from Pros and Cons, and what's the other channel, the bigger one that he does? Anyway, he went into the whole Eternity situation and how many times they got sued and stuff. I'm really more into the fact that it was this one guy and he was kind of bankrolling all of these different companies, and I don't know if he was losing money, winning, making money. I don't know if was he rich. I'm going to do some homework, and I'm going to do a full video on the whole thing, the Eternity, and all of these different companies being bankrolled by this one guy and all this stuff. It's quite interesting. But let's get into the story. There's a backup story that I'm not going to get into. It has a little bit of nudity when I kind of want to maybe monetize this one day, so I'm not going to really show that. Maybe I'll do an offshoot of that in a different video that I won't monetize. It's a pretty short backup, but it's kind of interesting in how the Flare universe kind of evolves. It's interesting. The contents have I guess the book is broken up into different parts, and it has 3 different storylines, or 3 different chapters. And so first, let's get into the story. So I guess it's a Flare character from the Champions. Like I've said, I've never read any of the Champions, and I don't really know about it. So apparently she's a superhero, and she's going to monetize herself. She's gotten some kind of endorsement deals. So she's for a jeans maker. And so her and her agent, I guess, have this whole thing built up, and she calls her to get her to show up for this this whole gala thing. And I guess she had too much to drink last night, and she's really kind of tired, so she doesn't have her clothes on completely. And she goes into the meeting, and the reporters are flashing pictures, and she's all naked and stuff, and they're all kind of making it it's like it's funny for them, and she's a little bit embarrassed, but she gets over it pretty quick because she's there to sign her contract with is a Calvin Klein kind of ripoff jean manufacturer. So that's kind of interesting. This really reminds me of an old Stan Lee comic. He really used to do his writing in really a tongue in cheek kind of way. I wouldn't say it was a parody or anything, but it's definitely it was a certain type of genre, and this definitely goes into that. It's more of an adult oriented Marvel comic, I guess. I say adult oriented, but it's just got a little bit of doesn't even have any nudity in the first stories. Later on, it has some nudity in the backup, but other than that, so she goes and they're telling her that, well, first they're celebrating the getting $1 million to be this new Calvin Klein spokesperson or whatever. It's not really Calvin Klein. It's some kind of other fake jean manufacturer name. So they're celebrating and they're all excited. And this relationship between the two of them is very interesting because it says that they're friends, but they are clearly lesbians. And it's too bad they couldn't just come out and say it at the time. But it's definitely there. And there's a lot of sexuality going on, especially in the backup story. But the clear fact that they're lesbians, but they kind of back away from it here and there, and they're like, "My friend, you're my friend. I love you as my friend." So it's very interesting. Nowadays, they would have just been full on lesbian kissing and stuff, but it's too bad they couldn't do that, and they had to kind of retreat into back to whatever they're doing. So anyway, there's some montages, I guess, of her being a model in LA and doing all of her stuff. But then they want her to fight somebody because she's a superhero, and they want her as their spokesman, being a superhero, doing what superheroes do. So they find out that there's going to be a bank robbery, and it's the Master of Darkness or something, Darkon, the Master of Darkness or something like that. It's kind of hokey, kind of campy, but in a more it's a almost an Image offshoot. It's almost imagey. It's kind of like I don't know. It's a little bit more grown up, more campy, but also a little bit hokey like the original Marvel comics were. But anyway, she takes off in her flare costume. All of the women are very Frank Frazetta-ish, thick thighs, very curvy, and which, nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. I try to make that Cyrene similar to that. But so here's Darkon. He's robbing the bank. He has the power to manipulate shadows and shades and stuff. And then it's kind of interesting. They go to get into this fight. He breaks into the bank. They start stealing the money. Flair shows up, starts smashing him up and stuff. Steals his hat, makes fun of him, whoops his little cronies' butts, and he is kind of just playing possum and biding his time because he has these other powers that can kind of, like I said, he can manipulate darkness, and he can even make them solid form. So he actually defeats her in their battle, and they have this big battle. It's very hokey. He's Canadian. She makes jokes about him being Canadian. He makes jokes about her being German, English, and trying to be American. So there's a little bit of backstory that I don't really understand. If anyone's read any Champions, please let me know. Maybe in the a comment section about what is going on with her. And is she as sexualized in the Champions comic as she is in her own comic? So anyway, they escape. Darkon escapes. He says he might kill her next time they fight. And then it cuts to a couple pinups, which is pretty cool. Pinups are cool. And it's supposed to be highlights of artists that are going to be in it. And then they're in a dressing room, I guess. And this is chapter 2. She's she's just covering up the battle scars that she got with Darkon, and it's very, like I said, sexualized, and like I said, nothing wrong with that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Neil Adams style. I didn't say actually who wrote and drew this. So the writer is Dennis Maloney, and the penciler is Tim Burgard, and the inker is Mark Beecham. So those are the guys that do all of the creative efforts, and it's we'll get to that later on when I'm reviewing the art and the writing and stuff. But this is just you know, does this deserve being a splash page just to show off the booty? I guess sure, why not? So again, they're talking about Darkon and how she got hurt, and her girlfriend slash agent is really very concerned about her and doesn't want her to get hurt in another battle with Darkon. So she kind of reassures her that it's not going to happen because she's ready. And Darkon is at his own lair, and he's going to talk about his how he got his powers and stuff. He's got a silly little hat, and it's made out of cardboard, which they had talked about earlier. And this is the camping part, is that he's trying to talk about his he's reminiscing about how he got his powers and stuff. But his cronies are like, we heard it all before. Just shut your yap. We just want to get paid. And so then he goes on and he talks about how he was I don't know. It's kind of weird because he talks about himself in the third person, maybe a little bit. So this professor who was talking about or investigating or doing something with Darkon energy, and he had this big scientific model made, but then somebody tripped him, and so it exploded, and he became Darkon. And really, they go into the differences between Darkon and the light that Flare uses, and Darkon keeps saying that she destroys the Darkon energies, and so it kind of, I don't think there's really a Darkon scientific thing in the scientific community. I'll have to check that out, but which is apropos since today is the eclipse day. But so they kind of go on, and he talks about Flare and where she's going to be, and he's going to barge in on her and maybe kick her ass. So last time I did a review, I was talking about the artistry, not the art and not the writing, but the artistry of the writer and the artist, and how they were trying to, it was Hero Alliance, and they were trying to have loftier ideals and loftier aspirations than just a regular superhero comic book. Much like Watchmen, it has all of these really interesting facets. There's all of these different angles and ways that they're approaching these things. And, the art and the writing, it just melds into this perfect unison, and it becomes an artistry instead of just being art. And it's not just, characters on a page. It's different ways of making things really come together, and you feel like something special is going on. Really, that's the artistry that I'm talking about. It's something special going on. And this almost nails it. The scene is the commercial, and she's shooting this commercial for jeans or whatever, and they're making a movie, and they do it in shots like they are filming, like they're filming the commercial, and it really is an interesting technique of showing what's going on in the commercial and in the comic. It's very good, and that's kind of what I meant by artistry. It changes something that could be completely boring and mundane, and it lifts it up into something new and interesting. So they're at the commercial shoot, and they're just kind of going back and forth, and then Darkon shows up, and Flare, I don't even know what her real name is, and they fight, and they go back and forth, and it's really kind of silly, but as the fight goes on, it's really kind of an interesting fight. a lot going on in this silly campy kind of thing, and so they just can't keep fighting and keep fighting, and eventually Darkon gets the better of her, but then her agent slash girlfriend is going to shoot him in the head if he actually kills Flare, which really kind of hammers down the fact that they're lesbian lovers and not just friends. But it gives Flare the time to bust out of the Darkon bubble, and she kind of smashes into him, and she's gonna kill him. Her girlfriend finally stops her, and she says, I love you, and it's fine that he wanted to kill me, but he's not going to kill you. And that's just kind of how it ends. And there's another pinup, and then it goes, and then here's another pinup, and here's a letters page. I don't know if this is from the Champions or what. And then it goes on into the backup story, which I might look at some point. The cover is. I like the logo. I like the design of the whole comic on the page. It's not bad. It's certainly not bad. I think it could have gone with a little bit more. Had there been some really good foreshortening on her, it could have really brought to life to the page. Because really, when you're having a cover, you don't want anything flat. You don't want anything subdued. You really want to smash stuff out with a lot of foreshortening, a lot of action, a lot of in your face. And so let's go into the writing. The writing is very good, very succinct. Everyone, super voice. Everyone really has their own voice. She's German, English, wants to be American, and you can kind of tell even before Darkon says anything about that kind of stuff. She's a little ditzy. She's a blonde. She's a little ditzy. She's a little goofy, and that's perfectly okay. Her girlfriend is very supportive, and they're just best friends and in love, and you can really tell. The guy that she's working for, who's giving her lots of money, has his own accent. They have their own accents. Darkon is Canadian, and that really even comes out. They make fun of him saying "a." Yeah, so all of their voices are very, very good, very nicely written. The plot is broken down into these three different tales, three different chapters. So it's really it's a solid plot. It's it's simple. It's super simple. You introduce the character, you bring her out into more introducing her to the public. She goes off to fight the villain. She beats the villain. The villain beats her. She comes back and she beats the villain again. It's very trope. But it's still pretty good because it's so well written and can I say well written? It's competent. It's very competent. Do I want to buy more Flare because of the writing? No, I don't. I would go back and get some Champions to see what is going on or what went before. But really, I wouldn't get any more because of the writing. It just didn't grab me. And as for the cheesecakeness, that can go only so far for me. It's got to have good characterization, and it kind of does. They are good characters, and they present themselves that way, but nothing that I really would want to further pursue. So it's competent. It's pretty good, the writing. The artwork is better than the writing. I would say they're trying to be Neal Adams, there's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't be surprised if he is one of the guys that worked for Neal Adams at Continuum or Continuity, whatever publisher that Neal Adams had, and with Armor and all that stuff. I think I might have to get some of those and review those because those were pretty cool. But it kind of looks like Neal Adams stuff in a way, or it's somebody trying to be a Neal Adams, but it's pretty cool. The coloring is actually all really good too. I really love the fade in colorings, and it's really nice. And his panel use is very great. When he's got a lot to say, he's got a lot of panels. He's got a really nice montage. It all of the narrative art, everything flows perfectly. There's no arrows in any of the panels. He's not afraid to have a broken out panel with no borders. It's just the image area, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that everything flows really nicely on the page. Easy to read, fun to read. All of his characters are very nice. He's got some really nice layout, and his characters are his shapes are really cool. He's got some really nice emotions in all of his characters' faces when they're talking. He's solid artist, and you can tell it's somebody that is a slave to the comic, and he's not all about himself and just making cool pinups, which I truly appreciate. Yeah, so like I said, I really like the color too as well. So yeah, this is Flair #1, an offshoot of the Champions. I'm gonna do, like I said, I'm gonna do some more research on Eternity and Innovation and all of these other Aircell, all these other comics that they're all intertwined. They're all interconnected by the same publisher or the same person who didn't want to be known as the publisher, which is very interesting to me. So Flair #1, a little bit of booty, a little bit of action, not a bad story, and nicely drawn. And the cover's good. I kind of wish it was blue. I wish this was blue instead of red. The red kind of makes it a jumble because this is all a reddish, yellowish kind of thing. Not bad. That's just a little tidbit of something that I would have done a little bit differently. I would say I would give this a 6. No, I'm 7. I'm going to give it a 7. The art really bumps it up. If the art hadn't been so good, I think I would have gone down to a 6 or a 5. The writing, even though it's not bad, and even though it is what it is, it's campy and a little cheesy, but it's also solid, but it doesn't make me want to buy another Flair. That is probably one of the biggest in my numerical rating system is, do I want to buy another one of these comics? Do I want to buy Flair 2? And the answer simply is no. So that bumps it down like 2 or 3 grades just by itself. The campiness, I'm not really into that kind of thing. So it is what it is. If you like camp, then you may really enjoy this, and you might think it's more than a 7. But it's solid, so I'm giving this a 7. Flair, #1 from Hero Comics, 1988. If you guys like this kind of content, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and also I'd really appreciate a thumbs up if you do like this content. If you don't, then don't hit that thumbs down. Why would I ever want a thumbs down on my content? But thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.